In the heart of Kerala, on a stormy monsoon night, a large cargo truck rumbled down a secluded stretch of highway, carrying a precious payload, 1,000 kilograms of pure gold. This was no ordinary cargo, but the wealth of a powerful jewelry syndicate being transferred to a secure vault in Cochin. Armed guards were stationed on the truck, and every precaution had been taken to ensure the transport would be smooth and secret. Yet, in the dead of night, that truck vanished without a trace. The next morning, a national headline blared, 1,000 kg of gold missing in daring heist. This was a case unlike any other, and the stakes were incredibly high. The jewelry syndicate had ties to some of the most powerful people in the country, and whispers of organized crime syndicates echoed through the police corridors. The authorities were at a loss. Enter Nolan, the sharp-witted detective, known for his knack for solving seemingly impossible cases, and Peter, his meticulous and observant partner. The two detectives had tackled cases that no one else could touch, and now they were called to solve the case of the century, the case of the missing gold. Nolan stood by the edge of a muddy road, his eyes scanning the dense forest that bordered the highway. Peter was beside him, crouched near a set of tire tracks that abruptly disappeared. There's no logical explanation for how a truck carrying 1,000 kilograms of gold could vanish, Nolan muttered, his tone sharp with frustration. Peter, ever the calm and methodical one, looked up. Nothing is ever as it seems. But this road, these tracks, they tell us something. He pointed to the faint imprints left by the truck's tires, now obscured by the night's heavy rainfall. Nolan took a deep breath, closing his eyes to visualize the scene. If the truck didn't keep driving, then it was taken somewhere else. But how do you move a truck this size without anyone noticing? Peter stood, dusting his hands. We need to talk to the locals. Somebody had to see something. They drove down the winding road, passing lush green fields and small tea stalls that dotted the highway. Soon, they reached the last known location of the truck, a way station just outside Cochin. The officer on duty was a short, anxious man who had already been questioned by the police numerous times. I already told them, Detective. The truck came through. The weight was exactly what it should have been, and then it continued down the road. That was the last time I saw it. I don't know what happened after that. Nolan raised an eyebrow, scrutinizing the man's nervous demeanor. Peter, standing back, noticed a flicker of something in the officer's eyes, a brief moment of hesitation. Did anyone else come through the way station after the truck? Peter asked, his voice calm but firm. The officer shook his head. No, sir, no one. It was a quiet night. Peter exchanged a look with Nolan. Something was wrong. Nolan stepped forward, his piercing gaze locking onto the officer. Are you sure? Nolan asked, his voice icy. Because if you're hiding something, now's the time to tell us. The officer broke under the pressure. Okay. There was someone, a black sedan. It followed the truck about 10 minutes after it left. I didn't think much of it at the time, because cars often follow trucks for protection, but... Peter leaned in. But what? The officer stammered, but it didn't stop. It just slowed down for a second, then sped up again. I didn't report it because I didn't think it was important. Nolan nodded. It's more important than you think. They had their first real lead, the black sedan. The robbery wasn't the work of small-time criminals. It was clear to Nolan and Peter that they were dealing with something far bigger. The jewelry syndicate, one of the most influential in South India, had enemies everywhere, competitors, gangsters, and underground networks that thrived on high-stakes heists. As Nolan delved deeper, he learned that a notorious crime syndicate, led by a shadowy figure known only as Rajon, had been scouting the syndicate's operations for months. Peter spent hours combing through surveillance footage, looking for any sign of the black sedan, while Nolan worked his contacts in the underworld, hoping to gather intel on Rajon. It wasn't long before they got their first big break. Rajan's men were seen in the area 2 nights before the heist, Nolan said, pacing back and forth in their makeshift office. They've pulled off jobs like this before, stealthy, highly coordinated, and no one ever sees a thing. Peter didn't look up from his screen, where he had paused a grainy security video. Got something, he said, his voice steady. That black sedan? It was seen at a truck stop about 30 kilometers from the way station, just minutes before the truck went missing. Nolan looked over Peter's shoulder. The footage was unclear, but it was enough to confirm their suspicions. They were tailing the truck, waiting for the right moment. Peter nodded. And then they struck. Tracking the black sedan wasn't easy. Whoever had pulled off the heist knew how to cover their tracks, but Nolan and Peter were relentless. Their investigation led them deeper into the murky world of Kerala's underground, where money and power changed hands in back-alley deals, and violence lurked around every corner. It was in one of these dark corners, a dingy bar in the heart of Cochin, that Nolan and Peter found their next lead. Rajan doesn't do his own dirty work, said a man known as Banu, an informant with a penchant for expensive watches and cheap liquor. But I've heard whispers. He's planning something big, something that'll make him untouchable. What do you know about the gold heist? Nolan asked, his voice cold and demanding. Banu hesitated, glancing nervously around the bar. I know Rajan had a man inside the operation, a driver. He was supposed to take the truck off course and deliver it to Rajan's people. But something went wrong. They lost contact with the driver, and now Rajan's pissed. Real pissed. Peter's eyes narrowed. Where can we find this driver? Banu smirked. If I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. Nolan leaned in, his expression dangerous. You'd better find out. Days passed, and the tension mounted. Every lead they followed seemed to end in a dead end. The driver, it appeared, had vanished along with the truck. But then, a new piece of the puzzle fell into place, an anonymous tip. The tip led them to a remote warehouse on the outskirts of the city, where the black sedan had been spotted once more. When Nolan and Peter arrived, the place was eerily quiet. They moved cautiously through the dark corridors, their senses heightened. And then they found it, the truck. It was parked in the center of the warehouse, its back doors open. But there was no gold. The cargo was gone. What the hell happened here? Peter muttered, stepping inside the truck. Nolan scanned the area, his mind racing. Something went wrong. The driver was supposed to bring the truck here, but someone else got to it first. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man with a scar running down his face. It was Rajan. You've been a thorn in my side for too long, detective, Rajan sneered. But this is where it ends. Before Nolan could react, gunshots rang out. Peter dove for cover as Nolan returned fire, but Rajan was already disappearing into the darkness. They had lost the gold, but they had found their man. Back at their office, Nolan and Peter pieced together the final pieces of the puzzle. The driver had betrayed Rajan, cutting a deal with someone else for the gold. That someone else had intercepted the truck before it reached the warehouse and made off with the treasure. But who was behind the betrayal? Nolan and Peter worked through the night, following every possible lead. And finally, they found the answer. The mastermind wasn't Rajan. It was someone closer to the jewelry syndicate, a trusted insider who had orchestrated the entire heist from the beginning. It was the syndicate's chief financial officer, a man named Shankar, who had planned to disappear with the gold and leave Rajan to take the fall. Nolan and Peter moved quickly, tracking Shankar to a private airstrip where he was preparing to flee the country with the stolen gold. As they arrived, a private jet was already idling on the runway. This ends now, Nolan said, his voice filled with determination. Peter nodded, his gun drawn. Let's finish this. They moved in, taking out Shankar's hired thugs with precision and speed, and then they cornered Shankar himself, who was clutched.
Please subscribe and follow. See you in next video.